Hey everybody, it's Brennan. It is a Thursday on the 16th, I believe. Yes, the 16th of April. I had a video planned, but I got some really good questions from people that kind of threw that off the rails a little bit. I was gonna kind of touch upon Trans 102 as far as like terminology goes and different ways of talking about trans people and trans bodies, trans experiences that kind of don't really ring true to the way that trans people experience their own lives and bodies. So I guess actually that's a pretty good segue into questions about acting that I was asked. A couple of the terms that are kind of often used that are sometimes problematic. A big one are like MTF and FTM. They're used really commonly in trans communities, especially among like transsexual people, people who make changes to their physical bodies. Um, but they are like slightly problematic because a lot of people who are trans don't really see themselves as being born female or ever being female or having been born male or ever being male. Um, when I kind of talk about my own life, I refer to myself as a girl. I have a lot of trouble calling myself I never really lived as a woman. I never really reached, I feel like woman is like a self-actualized female identifying person, and that never happened. I, yes, he's pretty. I kind of prefer to say that I was born and raised that I was assigned female and raised in a female space or occupied a female space. Instead of referring to myself as female or having been female, I prefer thinking of this space that I was occupying at the time. Um, a lot of people prefer that, especially with trans feminine people. A lot of trans feminine people are a lot more sensitive to like the born male sort of thing. I think that's because there's a lot more stigmatizing of the trans feminine body, just in the world in general. Um, yeah, another couple terms to really avoid are pre-op and post-op. Those are really, really, really offensive. One, it's not really your business what somebody's medical history is unless you're their doctor. And two, a lot of transgender people don't get surgery. I'm not planning on surgery. That's really like personal. And like it's not a requirement. Like you don't have to get surgery to be transgender. Um, so that's just a rude question. And when people ask, like, are you pre-op or post-op? It really shows that you don't really understand what transgender is, what transgender means, and it really shows that you kind of don't really know any trans people or like have ever really listened to somebody, I guess, talk about how they prefer to be spoken about because it's pretty like heavily out there that pre-op and post-op are very offensive terms. So yeah, just kind of avoid using that. Um, I think like a lot of this, like, and this is like the segue I'm gonna make with acting, is that I really resist, and a lot of trans people do the idea of a trans narrative as being somebody who was born in the wrong body, like that myself as a FTM spectrum person, a trans masculine person, was born with a male brain and a female body. Like that's the way it's oversimplified, but that's not what's going on at all. First off, there's no scientific basis for a male or a female brain. That's something that's still being studied actively by endocrinologists, embryologists, child development specialists. That's something that question has not been answered. Nobody really knows the differences between the male and the female brain, if there is a difference. And that also feeds into the idea that like there's something wrong with being transgender, that like it's like yeah, you're born into the wrong body as in something that needs to be corrected. And that also just kind of sets up this idea, excuse me, it really sets up this idea of like a before and after instead of like a transgender person existing as transgender throughout their transition. They're kind of seen as being transgender before and then normal after. Um, and like a lot of us aren't seeking normalcy. A lot of us are seeking personal comfort and personal compromise with our bodies. It's not about, I want to say it's not about fitting into like a cis male or a cis female physical or metaphysical space, but to a certain extent, our safety does depend on being able to fit into those spaces. But in an ideal world, I think gender is personally defined, and I think that's where most transgender people are at with that. Um, I know I'm the kind of person who wants trans to be seen as kind of like a separate gender than male and female. Like, I don't know. That's a whole other topic. So yeah, I really get annoyed by this concept of like, you know, transgender people having been born in the wrong body and like having to go through surgery and all this stuff to fix it, because it's an archaic idea, and it's one that is consistently refuted by transgender people who talk about their own experiences. Like, I don't feel like I was born in the wrong body. Like, I don't know what that even means. Like, this is my body. Like, this is what I was, like, like, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. Because, yeah, like, my body doesn't really feel like mine. It feels like my body went through the wrong puberty more. It doesn't really feel like, the mistake was made. I think a lot of trans people feel similar on this, that like we don't really understand why we were born into the bodies we were born in, but there like has to be a reason, and like the journey tends to be the reason, I guess, if that makes any sense. Yeah, I mean, like, it's just really frustrating, like, to have, you know, trans people say time and time again that there's like a lot more to the transgender experience than like this wrong bodiedness and like this, you know, tragic narrative, and then like, you know, the coming out, and then like, you know, getting surgery and becoming who you are, and like everything's hunky dory. Like it goes a lot deeper than that. There's a lot more going on. Um, it's like it's almost like people who are trans. I mean, I know. Oh, it's so hard to explain. Like, I try and think of like I do think there is a biological factor for transgenderism. I really do. I base that on the physical changes I've experienced, and just how ready my body was for the switch. It's insane. Like, and my doctor even says sometimes people are like that. Their body's ready. And just how quickly and well my body's adapted to these hormones really makes me feel like these were the hormones I was supposed to have. And like I just remember a lot through my youth kind of searching for my masculinity. I would like Google symptoms for like high testosterone or PCOS, or like there had to be a reason why I didn't feel um like I felt like an other when I compared myself with other girls. Um I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm like this is like really strange to explain. It's almost like I was born highly sensitive to gender conditioning almost. It's like that's what messed me up. Learning to be a girl was a conscious thing in my life, and I think it is like that for a lot of people. But it was like really distressful for me, and living the way I'm living now makes more sense. I make more sense in that space. Do I see myself as a man? No, I don't. Like I see myself as like a man person, like a person who is perceived as male, who lives as male, who's in a male space, but like I have a history that's so different from cis men, and I have a body that's very different from cis men, that I want to be appreciated as the reality of the body I have, not interacted with as an incomplete male. Um, so yeah, I really don't like how oversimplified the transgender narrative is. And, you know, the reason that is because transgender people are not in control of our own narrative. Non-transgender people in media and in art and literature and in film and TV, they're controlling our stories, not us. And that's really messed up. And that's kind of where I wanted to go with this post and to answer a couple questions that people had. Like, acting's acting, and I understand that, like, a fictional piece is a fictional piece and every actor should have access to a role. Like, I get that. um but until transgender people are able to play cis people and cis roles and cis characters without anybody batting an eyelash, there's no room for a cis person to play a transgender person, because as it stands, that's trans face. When you like, I remember as a kid, I really liked the movie The King and I really, like, I have a huge crush on Yul Brynner. And, like, that movie was really awesome. And I remember seeing it in adulthood and being like, I thought I could have sworn there were Asians in this movie. But seeing it in adulthood, every single Asian person in that movie is a white person, bronzed yellow, with their eyes literally taped back. Like, it's really jarring to look at that and think that that was normalized at a certain point. And I don't like making the race and gender comparisons, because I think there are two completely different social issues, and to compare the two can be useful but can also be really messy and invalidating for people who you know, have to deal with racial bias all the time. It's a very different thing in society, and it weighs differently. And you know, you can, to a certain extent, hide being trans. You can't hide being the race you are. So, yeah, there's, like, a huge difference there. But, yeah, like, people bring up Laverne Cox a lot and how, like, you know, and it's, like, actually kind of sad that this is groundbreaking, that it's groundbreaking that a trans woman is playing a trans woman, who isn't, like, just a sex worker. Like, you know, there's, like, just a sex worker is really... Larry, invalidating towards sex workers, because sex workers are valuable people. But shit, where is it? Yeah, like, until, you know, Laverne Cox is freaking playing Catwoman, and nobody says anything about how someone who had or has a dick can't play Catwoman. Like, then we've reached a point where cis people can play trans people. Like, that's my opinion. Obviously people aren't going to listen to me, but I think it's immensely problematic when there's trans people who are aspiring actors who want to play roles as trans people, and also just roles in general, who can't get them and are getting passed over for people who aren't transgender. And, you know, that being said, I think there is a huge difference in being an actor who is genuinely interested in transgender people, who is genuinely interested in gender bending as an art form, or in, like, who is, like, aware of gender, and who might be sensitive to gender themselves, or gender nonconforming themselves. I think there's a huge difference between someone like that playing a transgender person and someone like Jared Leto playing a transgender person. You know, I didn't listen to my trans feminine friends when Transparent first started coming out. They had a lot of problems with it that I should have listened to. Most of their problems circulated around the fact that there weren't a lot of trans people involved with creating the show or in the show itself, which is definitely a problem. I mean, if your show's gonna have cis people playing trans actors, you should at least have a good crop of trans people writing the show. And not, you know, actually untransparent. One of the writers is somebody who's, like, defending RuPaul saying she-male, you know, so, like, I don't know. And I was really struck when Jeffrey Tambor received the Emmy for Transparent, and he was just, you know, I really felt, I was excited when he got the role, because I felt like in Arrested Development, his artistic choices with, like, kind of, I don't want to call it drag, but there were moments in Arrested Development where Jeffrey Tambor's character would wear female clothes, and I was really blown away by how actually nuanced I felt it was. I felt like it was just like, oh, he's in a dress, and there's no trans joke that's going along with it. There's no drag joke that's going along with it. He's just wearing his dead daughter-in-law's clothing, and that's super morbid and weird, and like it was funny, like it was innocently funny, and that was like really successful comedy, I felt, and something that's really refreshing because like there's nothing funnier than John Cleese in a dress slapping someone with a handbag. Like drag is really funny, like, and I mean obviously drag and transgenderism don't really have that much to do with each other. I mean they do, but like not really. But I was really struck by. I felt that Jeffrey Tambor is a sensitive person. He's somebody that is sensitive to gender issues, and you know, I felt with his acceptance speech was very gracious, and he, you know, dedicated that speech to trans women and to the trans community, and that was super meaningful because, you know, when Jared Leto won for Dallas Buyers Club, he went up there and disparaged trans women and talked about like how weird it was to like have to shave his whole body, and like just really made this weird like fetishistic thing about his role playing who was supposed to, the character was supposed to be a drag queen originally, and he changed it to a trans woman. So yeah, I mean, it really depends situationally whether I feel comfortable with a cis person playing a transgender person, but honestly, I would prefer trans people to be acting in those roles because I think it's really sad that like in a moment that's being called like this trans watershed moment where like all these trans characters are popping up, the majority of them aren't being played by trans people still, like, and so you can't really call it true visibility if we're getting passed over time and time again so you can put a cis man in lipstick and a dress. Like, it's just, it's really frustrating. But I do think that there are a lot of actors out there, and I think this kind of goes with the territory of being an actor. I've done acting in my life. I'm interested in it, and I've done like, you know, spoken word and monologues and things like that. And I'm really interested in comedy. I definitely think actors and like, you know, performance artists by nature, a lot of them are aware of gender and aware of gender in their own lives, and aware of how they may perform gender in different situations because they're just aware of performance in general. So I think that they actually could be valuable people to have a take on gender on the screen. That being said, I really do think the time has come and gone for trans people to be in leading roles. That would be really awesome. Hi, Larry. That's a good parrot. He's trying to talk, and it's really cute. I guess that was, like, kind of all I was gonna say. I mean, I guess I should run through, like, some of the portrayals of trans people by cis people, whether or not I find them distasteful or not. Jared Leto Dallas Buyers Club, fucking distasteful. Jared Leto in general, he's a sexual abuser. He's like go read what groupies have to say about him. He's disgusting. So I don't care about him. And I think Jeffrey Tambor is definitely more sympathetic, although Jill Soloway really messed up. She doesn't have a lot of people who are trans consulting on the show, and she's made jokes about Bruce Jenner that were really inappropriate and really showed how she views trans people, which is as her medium and as a plot device, not as people. And I think you know, Hilary Swank in Boys Don't Cry. That's of a different era. That's definitely of an era where you could make the excuse that society wasn't ready for a trans person on the screen yet. I feel like people still try to make that excuse now, and it's completely invalid because there are trans people in public, and people are kind of okay with it. Eddie Redmayne has no business playing a trans woman. I do appreciate that he was intelligent enough to come forward and say, I'm not the right person for this role. I don't know. I think he's at least smart enough and nice enough to say that, to acknowledge that, but he's not. He's not the right person for the role. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of young trans feminine actresses who want to show their stories. And I mean, I think The problem goes even deeper than just actors playing it, though, because it's, like, the writing that matters. Like, if I were to write... If I were to make, like, a movie about trans people, you know, it wouldn't be this freaking, like, tragic story, like, about how hard it is to be transgender and, like, I get murdered at the end. Like, I wouldn't make that movie. I don't want to watch that movie. I want to watch a movie that's empowering, that shows transgender people existing in a space away from cis people, because we are still trans when you leave the room. Because, yeah, we're always kind of shown in contrast to cis existence, and, I don't know, that's not... I understand that without, like, you know, society's binary gender, there wouldn't be transgenderism. Like, I understand that, but I would love to watch a movie that's, like, you know, two trans feminine characters just, like, kicking it. And, like, I don't know, maybe they go on a crime spree or something. Like, I don't, like, some stupid crime spree. Like, not to fund surgery. Like, to fund, like... I don't know, I'm gonna rip off Broad City and, like, Wheezy tickets or something. I don't know. Like, what if Broad City were two trans girls? Like, that would be amazing. Like, I would love that. Like, we have lives and interests that exist outside of our genders, and I'm just kind of pigeonholing to see, like, every time a transgender person's on the screen, it's, like, within the context of, like, a transgender narrative in this tragic transgender story. Like, I think the absolute best example of a transgender person in art or media or literature is in the book Kafka on the Shore by Murakami. There's a character in there who's transgender, and it's revealed, I mean, spoiler alert, sorry, it's, like, revealed, like, halfway through that he's female-bodied, and it's not even a big deal. It's just, like, a minor part of the story, and then you move on and you learn more about the character other than that, and he's allowed to exist beyond his body and beyond his transgender identity. Yeah, that's, like, that is what we're looking for, to be shown as people first and foremost, transgender maybe second. Yeah, I hope this kind of answered some questions. I feel like I had another one in here that I was supposed to answer but did not. Oh, just about my own realization, I guess. Yeah, I've definitely answered this before, but I'm gonna answer it again. I came out really late. A lot of trans masculine people, I feel like, do, especially those who are in who are gay identified and were in straight female spaces before. I think we tend to come out latest. I feel like I have a lot more in common with gays over 30 who remember their communities evaporating and who couldn't come out in their teens. I have a lot more in common with them than I do with, like, gays who were raised in the It Gets Better generation. Yeah. I don't know. Like, the realization that I was trans hit me like a ton of bricks in 2012. I remember, I'm just going to share this one anecdote, because I feel like this video's already run on a little too long, but when I was a kid, I used to be in the bathtub, and I would imagine that somebody had changed my body and stitched me into this one and scientifically programmed me to develop along these lines. This is before I had any context for transgender anything, and how do you ask that question? Like, so I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that question. So yeah, sorry this ran over. I hate being so verbose, but yeah, hopefully you have a great week. Take care.